Hello, welcome to my tiny little attic studio. In today's video, I thought I'd talk about how sketchbooks inform my paintings. Last week, someone asked me how I copy what's in my sketchbook onto a painting. So I thought I would talk about how sketchbooks inspire, inform, are the birthplace and wellspring of all my ideas, but how I don't necessarily copy something in my sketchbook onto a painting. I don't think of a sketchbook as a precursor or a place that I'm planning out a painting. However, everything in my sketchbook comes out in my painting. I think of sketchbooks as creative compost. It's where we mix and percolate ideas and try things out and see the combinations we like, the compositions we like, the colours we like, the marks we like. It all kind of mixes together and helps our artistic confidence, our artistic muscle memory, and then I find that that comes out in my painting. My sketchbooks are fundamental to the way I paint, but I don't necessarily take a sketchbook page and turn it into a painting. And of course you could. I tend to work in a slightly more organic way when I'm painting. I like to build up layers of paint and layers of interest, and therefore painting composition sort of emerges later in the process rather than at the beginning. So I don't tend to draw out what I'm going to paint and then paint it. I like to invite in a little bit of surprise, I guess, a bit of not knowing where the painting's going to go when I start. That sort of adventure, taking the paint and going on a discovery mission and seeing if I can create something from layers of paint. Because art is just decision, 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 isn't it? And when we start, we don't know where we're going to end. We just have to have hope that we can improvise our way through the process. So I'll show you these paintings. They're not finished paintings. Perhaps share the materials I'm using. I'm just trying some new paper out, so I just thought I might talk about that as well. Just a bit of a chit chat about sketchbooks, about creativity, how everything informs everything else. In a previous video, I showed you this little sketchbook with lots of black and white, simple drawings and explorations, and I was interested in some of these bowls of flowers. I've sort of used that very rough destination idea to inspire some paintings. So these paintings aren't finished. I've used this Fabriano paper, which is a mixed media paper, acid free. It is 250 GSM and it's made in Italy, about 12 inches by 16 inches. And it specifically says that it's designed for watercolour, pastel, drawing and acrylic. I like this paper. I use it a lot for mixed media work, but I haven't specifically used it for acrylic paintings before. I use a lot of paint on my paintings, so I just wanted to give it a bit of a test run, and I think it's come out quite well. I use a lot of layers of paint. Paper has to be able to handle quite a lot of paint. So these are these paintings. They're not finished, but they are definitely heading in that direction. Very stylized bowls of fruit, vases, lots of dots, lots of blue, lots of colour. So I need to tidy them up. I need to tighten. I need to finesse. So there might be just some bits that are bothering me. So at this stage where they're sort of near the end, I think, I am just looking for the bits of the painting that are irritating me. Basically, I want everything on the painting to feel like it belongs and that it's part of the whole. At this point, when I've got clearly the sort of composition of the paintings laid out, I'm now making smaller and smaller moves to just finesse and tighten, make sure there's nothing on any of the paintings that I find bothersome. So there's some little sort of marks or dots here that are distracting me. There's something around this circle that needs tightening. So just small maneuvers. I want to keep the energy and some of the brush marks. There's something here that is bothering me on this shape. It's not clarified enough. So just small things, I think. And so these paintings have got a lot of paint on them. This paper has actually stood up really well. It hasn't buckled. I might still just put them under something heavy for a few days just to make sure they're super flat. So I thought it might be fun just to go back through a pile of old sketchbooks and see if there are any of the traces, the threads, the ideas for these paintings hidden back in old sketchbooks. Because as I'm painting them, there's a familiarity, something about some of the colours and the shapes and the motifs and the marks that feels familiar to me. And I'm imagining that if I go back through my sketchbooks, then I will find the origin stories of these paintings. So I don't think of my sketchbook as a plan I'm following. I think of it as a place to gather, to test, to notice, to experiment, to explore, to try things on, to understand who I am as an artist. All of this compost and soil and getting to understand my creativity then comes out when I'm painting. So these sketchbooks are from 2 or 3 years ago, and as I look back I can see that some of the shapes that I'm using today are embedded, hidden back in these sketchbooks. It's so interesting to look back and see the traces of ideas as they follow through time. So these are pages with acrylic paint and just some bits of collage stuck on, shapes cut out. And I can see that some of these shapes here are very reminiscent of the paintings that I'm working on at the moment. And I'm not looking back at these particular sketchbook pages as I'm painting, but there's something that's been embedded in my sort of artistic psyche. And this is a sketchbook from 3 years ago. And actually, as I flick through it, there are ideas, these big spots appear in lots of my work. It's really interesting to see how ideas follow through time. I mean, even this sketchbook page here, where I've sort of blocked out bands of colour, strips of colour, it's sort of reminiscent of some of these compositional choices. Even these sorts of things that you might not think, oh, that's a influence or a reference. So these pages here are little acrylic paintings of a collage that I did. Although they're not strikingly similar to the paintings I'm working on at the moment, I can see these really dark, powerful backgrounds are referenced in these newer paintings. It's like going back and being a detective, seeing the ideas that sort of were slightly explored here evolve, develop, become embedded in my visual artistic preferences and language. Look at these shapes, they keep appearing, don't they? And I'm not even necessarily conscious of it. And here's another sketchbook from 2 or 3 years ago, and these sort of colours, this blue and pink colour combinations are very evident in these paintings that I'm working on. I don't think of a sketchbook as a rough draft for the real thing. For me, the sketchbook is the real thing. It's where I'm able to come home to myself as an artist and work out what I like and work out what my art's about, work out how I like to make art and what I enjoy in that process. There's that quote from Steve Jobs, isn't there, about his kind of career where he was saying that he could only join the dots in retrospect. That's the thing I love about sketchbook. I never know when one little morsel or moment in my sketchbook is going to come in handy. You know, it could be a small mark or a shape or something from years ago. And then I can look back through my sketchbooks and go, yes, this is what I need in this moment. So it's like I've planted all these seeds. I've planted a whole garden and I don't know what's going to grow. A sketchbook isn't just a place to practice. It is a place to plant ideas, to ground your creativity, to understand what you're fascinated by and delighted by, and a place to refer back to. I flipping love sketchbooks. I love sketchbooks. So I just wanted to share the paint that I'm using, because actually in these paintings I've used two different types of paint. Some of the paint is very matte and some of the paint has a sheen to it. I've used both heavy body and high flow paint. So heavy body, I've used this Sennelier Abstract Innovative Acrylic Paint. So heavy body paint will retain your brush marks. Hopefully maybe you might be able to see some of the brush marks in the paint. It's got a buttery texture that really shows up the brush marks, and that can be great. I love that. But for certain processes and techniques within a painting, I also sometimes use this high flow paint from Golden. It's much more flowy and ink-like really, but it's not an ink, it's an acrylic paint, which is great for glazing. I enjoy combining different qualities of the acrylic paint on the same painting and using their different properties in different ways. So with heavy body paint, you'll retain the brush marks and it will have a textured surface and it will feel very painterly. And then a high flow paint acts a little bit similarly to an ink, but is very rich in pigment and colour, is really good for details and for glazing. So I often will use a combination of paints depending on what I'm after. A lot of the background sort of glazing, where I'm building up layer upon layer upon layer of paint to get a real rich, deep colour, has come from that high flow paint. And then the paint that has real definite brush marks is the heavy body paint. So I just thought I'd show you this painting, which is a finished painting and it's all varnished and waxed. It's clear to see the different types of paint I've used on this painting. Some of the big pieces where you can see brush marks embedded in the paint, that is heavy body paint. And then some of these smaller details where it's much more sort of precise is this high flow paint. I tend to use the high flow paint for glazing and for detail. So I'm always having a bit of a mooch around, looking at old sketchbooks, getting a pile of different work out and just noticing what I am noticing in this moment now. And I nearly always find that I might notice something that I maybe didn't notice at the time that I was creating it. So looking back through our own work can be a really informative, interesting practice in just tuning into what you're noticing now and how it can kind of help and support you and guide you. So that brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being such a lovely, supportive, creative corner of the internet. I think you're brilliant and I appreciate all your lovely wisdom, kindness and encouragement.